Hello, welcome back to Chaotic Creatives, a show about embracing the chaos that comes from living a creative life.
We are your hosts, two self-proclaimed chaotic creative gals. I'm Lauren Hom. Some of you know me better as Hom Sweet Hom on the internet. I am a lettering artist, muralist, and most recently, chef.
And I'm Rachael Renee, also known as Rachael Renee on the internet. And I'm an artist, creativity coach, and your internet hype gal.
Hell yeah. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome to episode 2.
Yeah, and today we are going to be talking about...
We are going to...
Cut it! End it! I'm kidding.
And that's it. And thank you for listening.
This is done now. The podcast is over.
Yeah, that was actually our final episode.
We're going to be talking about... our conversation today is inspired by a conversation we had while hanging out recently.
Aren't they all?
Yeah, basically. That's the reason we even have this podcast is like, hey, we have great 4-hour-long conversations when we hang out. What if we recorded some of it?
Yeah. Except we never actually just have the conversation. We still hang out and have the conversation. And then we're like, we
do it
talk
again.
About that.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good because we refine it. Yeah.
Yes. But we were talking about how our family and communities of origin affect our creative journeys and how we feel about creativity, making money, just everything lumped into our creative journey. Because we thought it was a nice introspective topic that can help all of you who are listening or watching kind of think about the same things in your own lives. Because inevitably, like what I said before we started recording, unless you've emancipated yourself from your family, all of us are impacted by like the group of people we were raised by and the values we were raised with. And we all come with like kind of pre-downloaded, preconceived notions about creativity and what it means to pursue a path as an artist.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, we're human. We're all seeking validation.
Yes.
As much as we work on validating ourselves, and that's something that I absolutely share and help people with, there's still always going to be that desire to seek approval from people who love us.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've been talking about in therapy, is that I find myself holding myself back. Or rather, my therapist gets me to admit that I'm holding myself back because I'm anticipating what my parents' reaction will be to the thing that I'm working on, and then sort of subconsciously holding myself back. And I feel like she got annoyed with me. I don't know if that's actually true, but she was like, you know, you can't always be seeking their approval. And I was like, I'm not trying to. I'm not like actively being like, oh, I hope my parents are proud of me. I know that they are. And I know that no matter what I do, they will love and support me within reason, you know, like no crime, probably big crime.
Yeah.
Violent crime.
No bad crime.
No bad crime. And so it's just something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I shared that with you as we were gabbing this weekend. Co-working, which did the computers come out once? Absolutely not, but that's okay because we had a great time.
Yeah, we did have a great time. And, you know, you and I have talked over the years because we've been friends for so long about it's interesting how our desire for like parental approval has manifested in completely opposite ways.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I feel like I said, like I'm anticipating what the reaction's going to be, and that it's like not allowing me to completely chase my creative dreams, or it wasn't in the past until I became aware of it. And now I'm like, okay, first make sure you're happy and then worry about other people's opinions of you. And that seems so obvious now, but when it's subconscious and you're not paying attention to that, it's hard to recognize. And I feel like yours is the opposite.
Yeah, where for those of you who have been following along with my career path, you've probably heard me talk about my dad before. And my dad is my number one fan. It is kind of the opposite issue that a lot of creative people struggle with, where my dad is so tuned into everything that I do and is like, he's like the overzealous parent, like at soccer games growing up, who's just like, yeah, that's my kid.
Did he ever like coach from the sidelines? Because there were definitely some kids.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. I feel like there was this one girl on my basketball team in high school that her parents would be like a couple people down from the coach. And she would be looking at her parents for what to do, like what plays to play. And it pissed the coach off so much. But she always listened to her parents first.
Oh my gosh. So he wasn't coaching necessarily, but he was just like a really invested fan.
Yeah.
I do remember specifically one time, I don't know if it was me or someone else. There was some kind of play. I played softball growing up. Something happened where the ref.
Sorry, I just like didn't know that.
Really?
Or maybe like, I can't picture that. Mostly because of the hat. Did you have to wear a hat? Yeah. I can picture you in like a softball jersey. And
we had a visors.
Oh, that's worse, in my opinion. Wow.
But the ref made a call, or the umpire made a call, and my dad didn't like it. And he goes, "What the hell?" And the umpire looks in my dad's direction, but doesn't realize it was my dad, thinks it was the coach, and throws my coach out of the game. Because he cursed in front of kids.
Oh my God. And then I imagine your dad like putting on the hat and stepping in because your coach had to get booted. And he's like, "That's right. That was my intention all along."
I actually can't remember. I'd like to think that my dad was like, "Sorry, it was me," and like recused himself from the game. But like, my dad has been so invested in like my success, seeing me do well. And it's been nice to have like an encouraging parent who's just like cheering you on. The flip side of that, though, is like, I feel like I can't let him down. And I've told the story before, but like he once was like, "I'm so proud of you. Like everything you touch turns to gold. I have no doubt that like you'll be fine." And that like was harrowing for me. I know he didn't mean it that way, but I was like, not everything I touch turns to gold. Like I don't have like 100% success rate. And I don't think that's good for creativity to put that like pressure on yourself to have a 100% success rate, because it's so subjective anyways. Mm-hmm. And so I've had to, like what you said about like, it's been like a driving force for me, where it's been like, I'm going to work harder and like make my parents proud. But it's been to a detriment sometimes, where I'm just like, is that ambition intrinsically like mine, or is it to make my parents proud of me?
Right.
Like, to make it like worth it.
And then it's like in cases, I would imagine in cases like you going to culinary school, where you really had to convince yourself that it was okay that you were putting your career on pause to do that.
Yeah.
And you still worked, but yeah. Did you have any sort of like thoughts around that did you have to do any convincing to your dad, or was he like, culinary school is gold too?
I mean, he's been great, because anytime I've brought a concern to him about like, hey, I need you to chill out, or like, he's been totally like agreeable. And so that's been lovely, and like reaffirming that like he loves me and wants what's best for me and will listen to me. Mm-hmm. I originally, when I told my dad I wanted to go to culinary school, he was supportive. And about a week later, he called me and he was like, "Hey, what if you saved the $30,000 and just cooked at home every day?"
And you're like, I do that. I don't want that.
Was less, I would like to think it was less about the career pause and more about the like practicality of like
spending money.
And like, I'm just going to pay for it myself. So I don't know. I think he was just trying to like be a dad and be like, "Have you considered this?" And I was like, "Yes, of course I've considered that.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do it." So like, I'm just going to save up and spend the money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that having such a like strong support system, but also like slightly overbearing and overinvested it's been good in a lot of ways, but also put a lot of extra pressure on me that took me years to realize that pressure, like that I was putting on myself to like achieve and strive for more, wasn't necessarily mine. Mm-hmm. And it's been a journey.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because some of it is like cultural. Like you saying the $30,000, just like in my head, I'm like, so many people buy $30,000 cars without needing to. Mm-hmm. Like, imagine if someone's parents were like, instead of spending that $30,000 on a new car, what if you just drove your car until you couldn't anymore? But like, I feel like in American culture, it's all about the new car, the next big thing. And so we continue to put ourselves in debt I mean, you don't have a car and my car's paid off and I'm going to drive it until it dies. So this isn't a good example, but like, I just feel like that's something that so many people accept as just like, that's just how much it costs. But when it's something that's out of the norm, like I'm going to go back to school in my 30s, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that your dad said that, but I'm, just trying to find parallels and comparison. And so, like a cultural thing and also where you grew up, because you grew up in California. There are probably other creatives out there. I grew up in the Midwest in a really small town. And
regionality like makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think like that's something that I have always been aware of, I guess, is like I always felt like an outsider. You know, I always wore weird clothes in school, but I still got good grades. I still played sports. Like I was the cheerleading captain and I was the prom queen in my tiny, tiny town. So it was like I always had this duality that I was fighting. And that's why I love Dennis Rodman so much. I have to have talked about Dennis Rodman on the podcast, right? I'll just say it again.
Do it.
So I love Dennis Rodman's story and I'll talk about it whenever I can because in the late 80s, early 90s, like the 89-90 team, Detroit Bad Boys. Here we go. I literally cried about Dennis Rodman in therapy when I learned this. So he was in his 20s and he hit a growth spurt like later and he was like literally working at the airport and just played basketball every day. And someone spotted him and recruited him and he went to college for like a year and then got recruited by the NBA. I don't know if that's the accurate timeline, but it's about that. Like he didn't go straight to college from high school.
Okay.
And he was recruited because someone saw him playing basketball. And then he played his first NBA team was the Detroit Pistons. And they were called the Bad Boys then because Detroit, there was like rough, quote unquote, rough Detroit. And like they got into a lot of fights. There were a lot of like physical hockey-like fights at these games because Rick Mahone was just like a badass and was just like, you can't fuck with me.
But you're not allowed to fight in basketball, right?
You were then. I literally have goosebumps telling you this story right now. It's so good. So I would highly recommend the ESPN 30 for 30 Detroit Bad Boys because it's so good. It tells the story of this team. But then if you follow Dennis Rodman specifically, so he was like like, oh my God.
Go.
Isaiah Thomas was like the captain of the team. And he was like really soft-spoken and humble anytime he was interviewed. And Dennis Rodman was just like, he's like a teenager. He just like didn't give a shit that he was becoming famous and was like in the NBA. And he like didn't answer questions in like the quote unquote right way. So they were like, he accidentally perpetuated this idea of them being bad boys and not giving a shit. But they were all good basketball players. And so then eventually he got traded or recruited or whatever to the Bulls. And so then when he joined the Bulls team, that was the 3 years where the Bulls won the national championship. This is taking way too long. Side quest.
All good.
And that's when Michael Jordan became the Michael Jordan that we grew up with. It was like they won 3 years in a row. They were undefeated. But Michael Jordan wouldn't have gotten as good if he didn't have to play the Detroit Bad Boys because they were so tough and good. Again, I have goosebumps again. I'm going to start crying talking about this team. That they pushed him to be better. And Dennis Rodman joined that team. And then by that time, I definitely didn't tell this story on the podcast because you guys probably wouldn't let me. So then Dennis Rodman was familiar with being a basketball star. And like the Bulls won. And so they were like championship winners. And then that's when he like started to really become the freak that we all associate with Dennis Rodman. And maybe he was always this freak. I would anticipate that I would expect that he was always this freak. But in the Bulls documentary series, they talk about how their coach, Phil Jackson, of the winning Bulls coach, like Dennis Rodman would be like out partying or whatever, and they had practice and he just like wouldn't show up. And instead of being like, you're off the team or you're benched or whatever, Phil Jackson would be like, he needs to be that Dennis Rodman in order for him to show up as his best defensive player on the team. And so he let him be his freak self. Whereas I feel like so many like jock type coaches would be like, you need to conform, fall in line, do your job. This is your job. And he understood and saw that in Dennis Rodman, that he was a freak and he needed to be a freak. But he's also a really, really good basketball player. And so there's like that duality of like, I call myself a freak. I say freak in an endearing way.
Yeah.
Like an outcast, like someone that doesn't necessarily fit into like the norm of what's expected for that role. And he had Phil Jackson and he never stopped being himself and like leaned into it and whatever, did all the weird shit. And was still an incredible basketball player. And so that's why I love Dennis Rodman's story, because he never wasn't a freak. And also he was a jock. And so like I saw myself in Dennis Rodman because I was like, I'm a freak and a jock too.
Yeah. And he was so what you're saying is he was a great basketball player, like because he was a freak, not despite being a freak.
Yeah. And allowed to be himself. And that like improved his ability to show up authentically on the court, because he was allowed to be his authentic self outside and was seen as that authentic self by his coach, his boss, basically. So all of that is saying that like I did all the things that I thought I was supposed to do. No one ever explicitly told me, you should play basketball, you need to get good grades, you need to do this. But that's what societal expectations are, especially, you know, like you said, regional expectations. It's like, everyone where I grew up, you were lucky to have a job. Like there were people that were like very, very poor where I grew up. And, you know, you were just like grateful for what you had. And so I was raised with this mentality, and not just by my parents, but by my community.
Yeah.
That I shouldn't push the boundaries. I shouldn't try to expect something different than what everyone else does, because why would you do that? You do what's expected of you. You get the job, maybe you go to college, you get married, you have kids, and that's it. And you be happy with that because you should be grateful. And I always just like felt constrained and agitated by these expectations, again, that no one ever explicitly said, but I internalized.
Yeah. And, you know, kids are perceptive, and you don't need to have it explicitly said to you to start to pay attention to the norms of the adults around you. And I think, yeah, I mean, after having grown up on the West Coast, started my career on the East Coast, and then lived in the Midwest for like 8 years, there's definitely a like simplicity and a humility and like a placing like consistency and security on a pedestal here in the Midwest that is lovely and different than what I grew up from. And I feel like it gave me a more well-rounded take of like what different creative people are doing in different pockets of the US. And I can totally see how it works for a lot of people. Like it is maybe there are norms and default modes for a reason, because it works for a large number of people. But for those of us who feel constrained by those norms, or we try them on, they don't quite feel right, then that's where creativity comes in, right?
Yeah.
We kind of come up with another path.
Yeah. And I think how I'm approaching like my creative life now, like what I dream about isn't like drive. It's, I want a slow life. Like I want time to just stick around with my creative ideas. And I think that the reason that I'm drawn so much to France, Europe in general, is because they have that slower pace of life, at least from what I've seen and read about, I guess. And I think it boils back down to capitalism, because like our American culture is just, we're all in this capitalist society, and the drive to like make more money and have more stuff and convenience and do this because it will propel your career. In America, that doesn't seem to be the same mindset. Like the stereotypical French mindset is like, yeah, I'll start my day when I start my day, I do my job, and then I go home. I don't think about my job. I don't bring my job home. And I think like that sort of separation of job and life is really beautiful, but that can't happen without our basic needs being met.
Yep.
And so like we don't have that in the United States. And I feel like that is also part of what maybe the Midwest, like sort of almost scarcity mindset, because in California, you don't necessarily have snow and you didn't have to, like my grandparents like canned food all summer so that they had food in the basement for winter. Like
there's more of a survivalist, like we gotta like buckle down and like get through the hard times.
Right.
That like is imprinted in the memory of Midwesterners.
Yeah.
I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say that like people weren't canning food and saving it in other parts of the world, but like the pictures of the snowbanks that are taller than your house, like you might not have been able to leave your house where I grew up, you know, like 100 years ago, before the effects of climate change were made aware to us.
Totally. And like even just, again, the people who raised you, the people you spent time around when you were younger, I think about like the families I grew up around in California, for example. My family is unique in the sense that like, yes, I grew up in Southern California, which is like, you know, beach culture, surf culture. My family though is like, they like to be indoors. They don't leave their bubble. Like my dad was born, like went to college and started a family in the same, I want to say like 30, 40 mile radius. And that's really interesting to me. Like we vacationed, we did the same vacation every year. We just drove up the coast, up and down the coast to California. And we were very like localized in this one little spot. And I think I don't know, instilled in me a desire to like go explore.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't seen much else. And so many people would love to live in Southern California. It is lovely. But I think, you know, anything becomes familiar after a while. And I just wanted to see what else was out there. Whereas my younger brother had a much different reaction where he was like, this place is great and is like gonna start a family there. Mm-hmm. And so I think everyone's just kind of cut from a slightly different cloth.
Yeah.
And I have always just prioritized, like from a young age even, I've just been kind of like weird and curious. And
I was just going to say it's a curiosity because as little exposure to creative people, I mean, there were creative people, but like there's a lot of like folk art type stuff in the UP, you know, like people making wooden jewelry or whatever, you know, like what you would expect if you go to like the UP in a tourist shop.
I don't even know what to expect because I've never been. Like Mackinac Island?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fudge.
Right. It's different. It's just like, anyway.
Like lake art?
Oh, yeah. Lake art,
cool,
beach,
we grew up with a lot of beach art, sea glass.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a lot of that. But then there's also like, you know, like birch bark notebooks and pens that look like a stick. Like people making those types of art. And that's great if that inspires them, but that was not the type of art.
Sorry. Kristle and I just made eye contact and now I'm laughing. I love the idea of pens that look like sticks.
Oh yeah. I had a lot of them. Yep. It's like truly they would take a stick, hollow it out and put a lead in it.
There's going to be one person who's really mad at me for laughing because they make pens that look like sticks.
And our whole message is that if it lights you up, that's all that matters. I'm so used to seeing it that I didn't think about it.
Yeah. I mean, in another life, I was talking with someone the other day about like, what were the like alternative, like realistic alternative paths your life could have taken? There is a reality in which I never left California and like, I have a small shop by the sea and I sell driftwood and sea glass artwork. Like I'm laughing because of that.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to poo-poo that. Like that is a very realistic and I will say in demand thing. Mm-hmm. So cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I'm thinking now, like there's a lot of plaid and I'm trying to think of like what an Airbnb would look like up there. And there's like mounted fish and deer heads on the wall. Like that's just what people it's just not the type of design that you and I are attracted to.
Sure.
And so I wasn't exposed to a lot of that. But even without that exposure, I had a yearning to be in a city. Like from a young age, I was like, I'll live in a city. And when I was in high school, I was like, I'm going to be CEO girl boss and have a corner office. And I think I was just misguided in like what I wanted. I want to live in a city because of access and culture and diversity and, people and food and all the things that we love about living in a city, with the exception of public transportation, which we don't have here. I would love to have that. I yearned for something different without having ever been exposed to it. And so I think it boils down to a curiosity. And I think curiosity is a through line in both of our lives, and why we've become the people we are is because it's like, I do want to know more about that and I want to explore that. And then we're constantly refining our path.
Yeah, I mean, I think your exposure to that must have been like media, I'm guessing. Like books that you read, TV shows maybe, movies. And yeah, I think that is one of the beautiful things about so many of us like self-publishing on the internet now is you get to see so many different ways to live your life.
Yeah.
It's really expanded like what a fulfilled like full life looks like. Because now there's not just like 10 media companies publishing different things.
Yeah.
For all the ills of the internet, that is one of the positive things, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, Lauren here. Want to add muralist to your ever-growing list of creative titles? Well, then you're in luck because this episode is brought to you by Mural Painting for Designers, my online class that teaches you how to plan, paint, and price murals of your very own. Gain the confidence to pick up a paintbrush, start adding murals to your portfolio now instead of someday, and start painting the large-scale artwork that you've always dreamed of doing. Enrollment is open until May 21st, so head to homsweethom.com/classes or click on the link in the episode description to learn more. Okay, now back to the show.
My mom and I were having a conversation a couple of years ago, and as a reminder for anyone who doesn't have my life path meticulously mapped out, I went to engineering college after high school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My art teacher tried to get me to go to art school, but I had internalized somehow that artists didn't make money. Like at 12 years old, I was like, well, I can't do that. I don't want to make any money. And no one ever explicitly said that, but it was just like,
I bet you read something in like a history textbook about how Van Gogh was poor.
Yeah.
And like that like imprinted in your mind.
That and like just like maybe the way that people talked about artists.
Yeah, like hundreds of tiny little comments or winces or looks. Like you do start to internalize that.
Like, what are you going to do with that?
Unless you have a parent who's an artist or like an uncle or like a kooky aunt. Like you really don't have exposure or any true like validation, tangible evidence that you aren't going to be a starving artist. Because that's how societally we talk about it.
Yeah. And also anyone who is kooky or weird and is probably the people that I would want to spend time with now were shunned in sort of those like Midwestern traditional value type of places. So they were like hearing adults talk about other adults that I probably would have gravitated toward, but hearing them say like, well, she's weird, like I internalized that like, oh, if you're weird and you're kooky and you want a creative, you want something that's non-traditional, you're going to be shunned by the people in your community. And again, I have no specific examples of this, but it's just kind of like what eventually formed in my head as an idea of I can't go to art school. So I went to engineering college, and then the college that I went to was across the street from a private art college. And I met a bunch of my friends because of course, like I was drawn to the freaks and the people doing DIY shows and like punk culture and stuff. So I was drawn to those people. And then I was like, I want to switch. I want to go. And I remember bringing it up once with my mom and then like we never talked about it again. And I think I was looking for her to be like, all right, let's do this. Let's switch. Let's apply. And I was too afraid to do it on my own. So because she didn't push, because it wasn't her dream. She was probably just like, oh, she met some boy she has a crush on and wants to go to that school. You're a mile away. Stay at the one you're at. Like, she never said that, but that's, you know, what I am making up in my brain right now. But I didn't push, and I stayed in engineering college, and I stayed for grad school. And my mom and I were having a conversation a couple of years ago, and she was like, on NPR, they were asking, like, is there one moment that you can think of where if you had answered differently, it would have changed the trajectory of your life? And her answer was saying yes to me going to art school. Like, she said that to me. I was like, your answer is about my life? Which, like, that is so sweet.
Whoa,
and but like, I was like, oh my gosh, that means so much to me that she sees now how much I wanted that. And I was like, but it's okay, because like I had to experience the things I've experienced to become the person that I am now. And like, my engineering career has provided me the leisure to explore my creative play and explore my creative vision. So I don't think that there are any necessarily wrong choices on our paths. We just learn and change, and there's no shame in changing paths. But that was really sweet and interesting. That I think she's seeing a lot of what I taught, listening and seeing a lot of what I post and share now, and is thinking about how, oh yeah, she was a really creative, weird little Dennis Rodman freak kid. And yeah.
That's really sweet to hear. It's making me consider unblocking my father on Instagram.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to yet.
Yeah.
But that is sweet, because like, yeah, you want to give your parents the benefit of the doubt that they were just doing their best. And like, I mean, we've talked about this in previous episodes about how even if you have a parent who loves you and is supportive, talking with them about your hopes and dreams and like big ideas, they might not always be the right person to go to with those things. And having like a friend or like a creative colleague, someone who's at least who speaks the same language of like working towards similar goals or dreams is more helpful in that context. But of course, we still want the support and approval somewhat of our parents.
Yeah. And I think that can be said for not just our parents, but our friends too.
Yeah.
Like, depending on how diverse your friend group is, like if you're the creative of the friend group and other people have more traditional jobs, if you're talking about your newsletter or you got to upload on YouTube, you know, things that we do, they might not get it. And I also feel like sometimes it's hard to, like, if I'm really, really jazzed about a creative idea or like a new offering that I have, and I'm trying to explain that to my family or a friend who has a more traditional job, it can sometimes be met with confusion because they don't understand the process. It can sometimes be met with fear that projects as judgment. Like, ooh, are you gonna, invest all that money into that project? Are you sure? Because they're looking out, they're scared for your well-being.
Comes from a good place.
It comes from a good place. But even though it's well-intentioned, it can come as judgment. So then
it's not received well always, even if it comes from a good place.
Yeah. And so it's hard sometimes. And I just talked about this on the internet. Like, sometimes people can't see your vision and it comes across as judgment or disinterest because they don't understand. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. You got to be your own hype gal and also find creative community and people that you can talk about those things with.
Yes. And I think if anyone is struggling with like their parents or community of origin not quite understanding what they do, or maybe even disapproving, finding a new like creative home or like a new, even small community, even one or two people who understand what you do as kind of like a solid foundation of like, okay, I have some people in my corner, can make it easier to go forth and do the thing anyways, because waiting for or like needing your parents' approval before doing a thing is like a losing game. Like, you're never going to get the green light before you do it. Like, oftentimes too, like, I think so much of my backstory too of like not wanting to like let my parents down is them being like, receptive to me going to art school, but a little skeptical and like still wanting to prove that like it was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did like quote unquote make it. But there also, I've talked about this on this podcast before, like there's such a catch-22 of being a self-employed, like working creative person where like you can like hit all the success markers and then you still have to like figure out how to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was something really beautiful about the naivete of just like, I'm just figuring things out like 10 years ago. And then once I like achieved any notoriety or people are like, oh, Lauren's like set and successful. And this is, I'm speaking from like what I think my dad thinks about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, fuck, now I got to maintain it.
Right.
Like, I don't get to just like dick around anymore or like, I don't know if I've said this on this podcast before, but right before I went to culinary school, I broke down in therapy with the epiphany. I was like, oh my God, like I'm about to go to culinary school. I'm going to be in school part-time and like working part-time. So like I had already intellectually planned for this. Like I'm going to be making less money.
Yeah.
And I like the new year rolled around and I was like, oh my God, I think my dad's going to love me less because I'm making less money.
Oh,
I know. And it's so silly to say out loud now. And I talked to him about it because it sounds ridiculous, but it's genuinely how I felt.
Right.
Of like, it's almost like the mini version of what we talk about societally, where it's like, you got to prove your worth.
Yeah.
Like, and one of the ways we prove our worth is like, I can make money. I'm a good, productive little worker. And that's
absolutely
not a great metric to use. And he laughed at me when I told him about it. But he was also like, he is self-aware enough where he's like, I understand why you would feel that way, but like, I love you no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do, but also there are expectations because they're people too.
Yeah.
And so even if they aren't expressing them, they're there.
Oh, totally.
You know?
I still feel some of it sometimes. Like,
yeah.
But it's a lot of what you said about like, it's you in your head trying to get ahead of what you think your parents are going to say.
Yeah, that anticipatory thinking is what is holding me back, or has been. I'm working on it. And like my mom even said that yesterday to me. She was like, you know, I think sometimes you really consider our feelings like maybe too much.
Mm.
And I don't know if that is from being like a highly sensitive kid and just like wanting to make sure everyone's okay. Definitely have people pleasing tendencies. Mm-hmm. So like, but the anticipatory thinking is like, that's what I'm like really grappling with. Cause I'm like, no one even said it. No one even asked me to not be a creative or to like reconsider this decision.
Yeah.
But then also some of the decisions, like I have been getting tattooed since I was 16 years old. And every tattoo that I've gotten, I've been like, they're not going to like this. I mean, maybe not in the last like 10 years because they just know now that I'm fully tattooed. But Mom, if you're listening, I might get my face tattooed someday. Not big, just a little guy.
Tasteful. Yeah.
A tasteful face tattoo.
It's a generational thing too. I think the way that our parents' generation felt about tattoos and maybe like culturally what they meant and like the kind of people who had them. Like, it's changed.
Absolutely.
Especially as you're entering the creative world, like any in-house creative gig I've ever worked, like the entire creative department has tattoos. If anything, like not having tattoos now is like the countercultural thing to do.
Yeah, I know. I feel like the younger generation is like not getting tattooed, like because
no sex, no tattoos.
Yeah.
No drugs, no alcohol.
Losers. No, I'm just kidding. I call myself a wholesome little freak because like on the outside, I feel like I look tough, like especially in my all black outfit today.
Yeah.
I have green socks on. But like you see me and I have tattoos, and if I'm wearing all black, normally I'm not. But like I'm one of the softest human beings alive. Like,
yeah, you have an I love bugs banner in your car.
I do. I love bugs. I love people. That is one thing that has been great about growing up in the Midwest is I feel like I'm very kind, and that is a Midwestern type of attitude. And I like that I have that. But yeah, wholesome little freak. Don't know why I said
I was going to ask about the, doing the preemptive what will my parents think with creative career stuff, but you mentioned with tattoos, you've probably reached a certain threshold where you're like, they're probably not going to love this, but I'm going to do it anyways.
Yeah.
Like, was there like a switch that flipped, or like maybe the way you think about tattoos, you just wanted them badly enough that like, you're like, I'm going to do it. It's almost like a rebellious spirit.
Yeah, I think it was that. I think it was like I wanted to signal to other freaks that I also was a freak.
Yeah.
And find, my community, which I was trying to do in college because I, again, went to engineering college. So there weren't a lot of freaks. There were some, and I found more of like my people at the art school across the river. And it was sort of like what you were saying about your dad and how you like thought, if I make this much money, then it's okay. It was like, as long as I can cover them up and still get my professional, white collar job, it's fine. And so I didn't start getting my arms tattooed until I was in my late 20s. So like all of my tattoos were on my legs, which I could cover, and I wore long pants. And then I remember when I got my first arm tattoo, my mom was like, I thought you weren't getting your arms done. Not because she cared, but because she like we had kind of come to this agreement that like, okay, you can cover them up.
Yeah.
And then I started getting my arms tattooed, and I remember when she saw my back tattoo for the first time, we were like in the pool.
Sure.
And she's like, what the hell is that? I was like, oh, it's just my big dinosaur. Yeah. And now, I mean, like, it's like anyone with tattoos that you see regularly. Like I forget you have tattoos. I forget I have tattoos.
Yeah, you can't see any of my tattoos right now.
Yeah. You are a wholesome little freak
I'm
as
a
well.
wholesome little lady.
So yeah, I think it's just like I wanted them badly enough, and I kind of set this bar like it's acceptable as long as they're hidden. Just like, oh, that creative career is acceptable as long as I'm making enough money that's comparable to like a quote unquote good, reliable job,
Yep.
And these are just arbitrary bars. Like we could all lose our jobs tomorrow.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
Corporate jobs. And creative jobs.
Yeah.
All of them.
It's true. Like it's all kind of made up. But we do kind of have these like conscious and subconscious or unconscious markers in our head of like, okay, I'm good if, or I'm worthy if. Like,
yeah. And I think that those bars that we're setting are where we need to start unpacking things for ourselves. And that's what I have been trying to do about this. Like, oh, I can't do this, or I can't pursue this opportunity because I don't think my parents will think that's a safe bet or something. Like it's never conscious. And then when I start unpacking like why I'm holding myself back, it's those intersections of the expectations that I think that other people have for me. This episode is sponsored by Dress for Yourself, a 3-part style course by me, Rachael Renee. In Dress for Yourself, I share how exploring my personal style helped me to show up as my authentic self. And in the course, you'll learn how to use personal style to build confidence, how to define your personal style, and how to incorporate play into your wardrobe. Visit rachaelrenee.com, that's RACHALRENAE.com/style course to sign up.
To bring it all back to like the parental thing of like, we just want what's best for you, which is, I'd say, broadly speaking, what most parents would say when they criticize any creative person's life choices, be it like body modification, career path, like the person you're dating, whatever it is, the city you want to move to, the business you want to start. I think that even if there's good intentions, like we do it to ourselves where we're like, I related to what you were saying about like, I did a thing to myself where I was like, I'll only move back to New York when I'm making as much money as I was before culinary school. And then I realized I was like, to some extent, that's like out of my hands and I could be sitting here for a while. Like that doesn't seem like a good bar, like rule to have set.
Yeah.
Even though it felt cozy to kind of hold on to. And I think there's like an undertone a lot of times when we do stuff like that of like, okay, if I reach this certain benchmark, whether it's Instagram followers, income goals, like milestones that either we've set or society has set, then we'll do something. A lot of it seems to be related to like the inner parent being like, we just want you to be safe. We want you to be secure. And, we're all in our mid-30s now. Well, you and I are in our mid-30s. We don't know how old you are, listener. But like, we're grown. We can take care of ourselves within reason. I always have to like take a step back and ask myself, like, how risky is this actually? What is the worst that's going to happen if I move back to New York? If I take this risk, if I make this investment, if I want to do this thing, like actually looking at like my finances and saying like, okay, cash flow, net worth, all this stuff. Like, can I make it work? Like, do I have to wait? Am I going to be destitute and like on the street? No, like it's okay. And I trust myself to take care of myself and not be like so reckless with my money. But like, I don't have to wait until I've hit a certain income goal to pursue my dream or to feel like worthy of pursuing a thing I want to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's our whole messaging on here is just like try stuff and then reflect. Because if you put it off until some milestone, like you're taking away from the joy that you could be experiencing being in New York. You know, your friends, us, will be sad, but I'm excited to come visit you. And I'm excited for you because you've been wanting this. And that's like the right move for you. And I think that whether it's a move to another city or just the exploration of a new hobby, like this same thinking, I feel like we stop ourselves at any level of sort of life choice that we're making. Like, oh, I don't want to start a new hobby right now. What if I'm bad at it? Like, okay, what if you are bad at it, or what if you hate it? Great.
Because you're trying to avoid criticism. You're trying to avoid pain. I think that we're over calibrating for the parental voice of like, what if you get hurt? What if something bad happens? It's like the overbearing parent who's like, no, you can't go play because you could fall and scrape your knee. Like, you got to go play and eat dirt and like get sick and scrape your knee to live a life.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw some Instagram therapists talking, talking about how like, so many of us who are getting diagnoses later in life, or even like the Gen Z folks, like are leaning too heavily on these labels of like, well, I have ADHD, so I can't do that. Instead of it being used to inform how you approach decisions and challenges, how folks are too easily giving up because they're like, well, I have depression, so I'm not doing that, or I'm autistic, so I'm not doing that, because life is full of challenges. And if we don't practice our problem solving skills and approaching challenges and solving them, then we're not building resilience to life. And it was really interesting because I feel like, we've talked about different types of labels on here, not mental health diagnoses specifically, but how labels can be helpful in certain circumstances and then actually detrimental in others when we're relying on them too much. And sort of circling back to trying stuff, I think if we don't get comfy with failing and trying, we're never going to get to the life that we want to live. And I think that we so often see on Instagram, on the internet, the successes of people, but we don't see how many times they've failed and persevered and like still chased their dreams. And I'm rambling now, and we're basically out of time. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, my final thoughts were like similar to what you said about what you appreciate about growing up in the Midwest is that you're kind. Like, I think the whole point of having this conversation was to examine just like stories or behaviors or thought patterns that we inherited from our families and communities of origins, maybe even friend groups, whatever it might be, people you spend or spent a lot of time with, and just thinking about what is actually still helpful to you. Because things like being raised with a sense of like kindness or sense of justice or sense of like duty to others, those are good things.
Yeah.
And like things you might want to hold on to. And you're like, I love that. But there might be some things or like stories that like, you're like, that's actually not that helpful to me anymore. And you might just want to be like, I don't need it anymore. Leave it behind.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all comes with kind of just making sure that you're taking time to reflect on what's serving you and working on ditching what's not.
Yeah. Because like I have always loved my like go-getterness, my ambition. Like I realized again over the years that like some of it is fueled by like a desire to please my parents and like, want success and status and achievement, like, so they're proud of me.
Mm-hmm.
But like a lot of it is self-motivated too. And like, I am grateful for the practicality and pragmatism that my Chinese dad instilled in me. But I also, again, am aware of the pitfalls of only thinking that way.
Mm-hmm. Similar
to what you were saying about the diagnosis thing of like, it informs how you approach decision-making and how you move through the world, but it can't be like it can't be the thing that guides your entire decision-making process.
Right.
It just gives you some insight into how you are and how you operate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And us seeking validation from other people is normal.
Yes, it's human.
Like that's human. And wanting to please the people that love us is human. We just have to recognize when we're pushing past what is reasonable and maybe living our lives for other people or other people's expectations.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow, great conversation.
Yeah.
So a couple of heavy hitter episodes to start off season 3.
little pseudo creative therapy.
Truly, which like to me, so much of my creative practice is tied to my personal growth and the things I talk about in therapy.
Oh yeah.
They're intertwined in my life and I think in many people's lives. So,
yeah. For sure. And for anyone who is drawn to this podcast, who listens to this podcast because they like my work or Rachel's work, like I think that they'll be able to relate because you and I come from like for lack of a better term, like it's like a self-driven, self-motivated, like selfish, like standpoint where it's like my creativity is driven by my own wants and needs and my thoughts and sharing them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like my creativity is for me. And that has actually been the thing that's led me to the most like commercial success in a silly way. Like, you wouldn't think normally that was the inroad because so much of the business advice is like, find a target market and then like cater to that market. And it's like, no, I'm going to follow my intuition and do what I want, try to tune out the noise, but I'm human. So like I have ears so I can hear the noise, but like we're doing our best to like stay on the course that we set out for ourselves. I was talking with someone the other night about how I feel like so much of my life and my creative life is defined by needing to come up with my own carrots to put on a stick and then sticking the stick on my back and then like following the carrot until I get it and then finding a new carrot, sticking the carrot on the stick, which is such a silly metaphor, but like that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Of like really being in the driver's seat of your creative like career and creative practice and making sure you follow it, allowing yourself to follow it.
And to stick with your carrot analogy, I think I liked what you said about finding a new carrot and sticking it on there, because if we set a carrot on a stick on our backs and we chase it forever, it may eventually not be the carrot that we should be chasing. Like it's important to set a goal for yourself, I think, and work toward it, but constantly reflect on if this goal is still what I want. Because it's okay if it changes. Because your perspectives shift, you grow, and you may not want the same things. Like we don't want the same things we wanted 10 years ago.
And that's a beautiful thing.
And that's lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, Lauren, how can folks support us?
Oh, funny. You should ask. You have to bear with us while we get comfortable. While I get comfortable. Plugging our brand new Patreon.
Yeah.
If you want to support us, season 3, we decided to launch a Patreon where we will release some bonus content, ability to ask us questions, and maybe some other goodies, some discounts on our courses and products. So you can head over to the link in our profile,
Instagram bio, and probably
in the
YouTube
show notes.
And the show notes. We'll link it everywhere.
Whatever the details of wherever you're listening to this are, you will find it there. I believe it's patreon.com/chaoticcreatives.
Yes.
To keep it easy.
Yep.
So you can find us there. If it's not, then just Google it. Just Google it and we will come up probably.
Yeah. And if you're not able to support us financially, totally understand.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't, consider giving us a review, some stars, sharing the episode that resonates most with you with someone who you think would like it.
Yeah, even just leave a comment saying that Rachel looks great in all black.
And Lauren looks great in her shiny vegetable shirt.
Thank you.
Which is so cool.
Thanks.
What's the pink one?
What is the
Under
pink
your
one?
right boob.
Oh. I think
Red
it's a cabbage. It's red cabbage. Yeah.
Lovely. On that red cabbage note, thanks for listening / watching. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.